we have been trained over a course of time unconsciously to be a slave to the lender. And as long as we're a slave to the lender, we're always going to be more susceptible to thinking short term, because short term thinking is also a result of survival and being able to think long term, long range. This is where imagination is more important than knowledge.
Welcome to the WinEH podcast. This show is focused on empowering ranchers. Whether you're a seasoned rancher or just getting started, we'll guide you on how to use the infinite banking concept as an alternative way to finance your operations. It's a better way to think about money. Join us as we discuss planning for the future, attracting the next generation, and the art of keeping more money within the family. Here's your hosts, Winnie and Lacy.
Welcome, everyone. And we are back for, I think, one of our sessions into the 50s. Amazing.
53.
Yeah. Amazing how time flies. And we are just really excited to dive back into the book. The book being Becoming Your Own Banker, 5th edition, page 14, where Lacy and I are going to have a chat about imagination. And it's just the one page, and there is a lot to unpack here as it relates to imagination. So one of the first things that Nelson talks about is imagination is more important than knowledge. And then Nelson goes on to say, and this has been quoted so many times by so many of the people that really live this lifestyle, that the infinite banking concept is an exercise in imagination, reason, logic, and prophecy. And when you first heard this statement, Lacy, what was one of the first thoughts that came to your mind, came to your heart?
Yeah, like when we were introduced to infinite banking and we read Farming Without the Bank, I think what it ignited, like in both myself and my husband Reed, is just imagining what could it look like. And without that ability to imagine, like, okay, what if we stored our money here and adopted this financial lifestyle? What could it look like? And so without imagination and being able to think outside of that box, maybe you could get a whole life policy, but it probably wouldn't work for you like it can when you're open to that imagination of this concept.
It was interesting what he chose to write. Nelson chose to write on this page. I mean, he essentially just, in not so many words, just talk about the fact that there are things that are just facts, like math. Math is a fact. It can't really be adjusted. But once you understand the fact, you can use your imagination to that fact a little bit quicker, because sometimes facts need to also be memorized. And so he shares a really interesting story on page 14 all about this. And he also, and like as I was rereading this page could almost fall under human conditions, which will be coming up in future conversations, because I think since the dawn of time, it is within our nature to want to play God, so to speak. Right? Like he even mentioned something about like there, at some point, someone went to court to try to change the rule of pi in mathematics. And he basically said, like, Nelson was saying, like, by doing that, it was so futile to do that. It was an exercise in futility. And it's like, when you try to change the fact, you're basically butting your head up against the wall constantly, trying to change something that you actually really can't change.
Yeah. And that's what he talks about here. Like he gives an example of, in the late 1700s in a German school, young boys were given a task with numbers, but then to sum that all up, and when you get the book, you can read it for yourself, but the relationship between numbers, it's fixed and there's nothing that can be done to change it. And so when we just accept that rule and we start imagining, okay, if we did something a little bit different than we are conditioned to do with our money, what could happen?
And that's exactly where imagination really comes in, because we have been conditioned to be a slave to the lender. We abdicated our role thinking that we don't have a possible way to own our own debt. And yet here is an opportunity for every North American, Canadian, and an American citizen has this ability. We're so lucky. We are so lucky to have this ability, because guess what? UK doesn't have this possibility.
Yeah. There's even been Australians reach out and inquire about this, and it's not available in their country either. And so we are very fortunate in Canada and the US to have this option in this different way to adopt a financial lifestyle that empowers us individuals to be self-reliant instead of relying on the lenders. We're 5 years into practicing infinite banking, and all the time I'm coming up with new ways like, oh, well, I could do this. The latest was maybe I could self-insure for a couple of vehicles that we have. That's my latest imagination. And so even when you're 5 or like you, 15-ish years into practicing infinite banking, there's always ideas popping into your head where you're like, okay, imagining what would it look like if I self-insured that vehicle that I have, instead of, how, and this is homework for myself. How much am I paying per year for insurance on this car? But what would it look like if we self-insured?
One of the things that Nelson always talks about too is that the success of implementing the infinite banking concept into your life is to think about it as over the course of an entire lifetime. And in order for you to successfully implement the infinite banking concept over the course of a lifetime requires your imagination in order to do that, which is a part of our ability to think long term. And part of interestingly enough, is that because we have been trained over a course of time unconsciously to be a slave to the lender. And as long as we're a slave to the lender, we're always going to be more susceptible to thinking short term, because short term thinking is also a result of survival. If you feel like you're just surviving from day to day, then you have you can only think from okay, I'm going to take it day by day, or I'm going to take it month by month, or I'm going to take it paycheck by paycheck. And being able to think long term, long range, definitely, this is where imagination it's more important than knowledge. And I can agree with Albert Einstein on that one for sure. And then it comes full circle back to it's all about the way that you think.
Yeah. And you do have to change the way you think, and you have to, it's a constant. There's a verse in the Bible, this is just what comes to my mind, take every thought captive. And so every time when we are beginning to practice this concept, and even when we're years into it, taking every thought captive that doesn't line up with infinite banking, right? Or because we're so conditioned with the traditional way of handling our finances, because that's what we've been taught. And that's fine, because we don't know what we don't know. But it's like constantly stopping ourselves and saying, wait, but does this line up with infinite banking? And sometimes there are just situations where, yes, we do rely on the bank. And yes, they are there to help us out. Does it cost us? Yes, it does. Sometimes that cost is justified. Sometimes we're willing to pay that cost. And sometimes that's okay in order to achieve whatever we're trying to achieve or work through whatever we're trying to work through. But the ultimate goal is that we slowly work towards, because it's not something that happens overnight, we slowly work towards making the bank plan B and ourselves being able to self-finance and be self-reliant plan A.
Yeah, 100%. And to add to everything else that we're talking about, what also comes up for me is just like numbers can't change, math can't change. We can't change the government. We cannot change the way banks do business with us. We can't change that they want to be the lender and they want us to essentially be the slave to their lending. Okay. And this is where, again, the infinite banking concept can really allow you to not have to fight against a system that's already there. You can't change. It's futile. Just like Nelson shared in the last paragraph on page 14, when some state tried to get a mathematical term pi changed from 3.1416 to 3 because it was too complicated and cumbersome. And it's the same thing. You cannot change what the governments do. You cannot change what the banks can do. So let's not try to be God in this situation. And he's used his imagination. Nelson used his imagination. You know, that one saying where it's like, we all stand on giants' shoulders, right? Like we all build momentum from each other. Nelson gave us momentum already. He shared with us a solution through his pain, right? We don't have to walk down the hard path just like he did to find the solution. He already gave the solution to us that doesn't require us to, he already gave us a framework. And if we can dance inside this framework, and this is why he also called it infinite banking, because it is only limited by our imagination in all the different ways that we can make our life better.
And not just our life. So when you're sitting there talking, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking like, and for generations to come. And I think about like, you know, Mother's Day just passed. And I always say this, like, I feel like my greatest calling is being a mother. But then I start to think when I'm looking at our system of policies for our own family, I start to imagine how much easier the lives of our grandkids will be because of the road that we're paving now. And so imagining those future generations being brought up and taught the value of infinite banking, taught how to adopt this financial lifestyle and it being passed on for generations to come. And to our listeners, you can imagine whatever situation you have. Maybe you have a ranch, maybe you have a farm, maybe you don't. Maybe you own a coffee shop. I don't know, like put your business in there. Imagine the road that we pave now and the valleys we walk through to build these systems of policies where we're self-reliant and we're making that bank plan B. Imagine what we're doing for those future generations. And it gets me all up into my feels because they're not going to have to walk the same hard road. I mean, yes, there are going to be hardships in every life, but what we're putting in and the work we're putting in is going to make it a little bit easier for them. And for me, like that's all I have to say, and it's just worth it. Mm-hmm. If I'm making the lives of my kids and my grandkids and great grandkids, if I'm paving a road that makes them walk a little bit, carry a little lighter load, I'm happy to do that.
Yep. It's because you're also good peoples.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, and you think about like each kid is different, right? So with their passions, and one of our kids loves hunting, one loves hockey and golf, and one loves horses. And so if you're helping them pave that road and it's a little bit easier, and maybe one kid wants to take over the farm and one kid doesn't, and one grandkid wants to go to school for a golf scholarship. Like, it's just like all those things, like where everybody's so different, and this can work for every single person in the family, can make that road a little bit easier.
You know, when we're continuously allowing ourselves to do business with the government and do business with the banks, what it does not necessarily address, even though there is a ton of ads about different banks wanting to build relationships, you know, like now they're really pulling out the ads where it's like, oh, we really actually care. We really care about you. When we sit down and talk with us, we ask you about what you care about. And they understand, like, I think the banks are really starting to market very differently to saying like, hey, we actually care about you. Sure, but it doesn't solve certain issues. And I'm sure the people that work at the bank, I'm sure they genuinely do care about their clients.
Oh, 100%.
But one of the things that it'll never, ever address is that it doesn't help with the cash flow. There's no amount of nothing that the bank can actually do, or the people that work for the bank can actually do, to solve the fact that over a course of time, it's a one-sided relationship, and more of the money is going to the bank than it does actually come back into the pockets of the individuals. And so, like, repeatedly over a period of time, you talk about your kids and you talk about all the things that they care about. How much do horses cost? How much does hockey cost? How much does golf cost? These are all things that over like period of time, right? You need to recycle those dollars, money in, money out. And reading the book, building your imagination, reason, and prophecy in order to really understand what the infinite banking concept is about, you, beyond reading just one page number 14, you got to read pretty much every single page on this book to really start building that imagination in order for you to start wrapping your brain around a different way of doing things. So yes, doing business with the bank, it feels comfortable. And maybe, like what we're saying, IBC might be different. It might seem complicated and cumbersome at first, but like Lacy said, it's so worth it. It's so worth it to change the way that you're doing things and do it now.
Yeah. And you say like doing business with the bank, we just feel comfortable. Yes, 100%. But we also feel like there's no other option. And we're here to tell you that there is an option. Does it take time? Yes. Anything worth doing takes time.
Like the beef brisket.
Yep. Like smoking a beef brisket or going to the gym. You don't see results overnight, but it's 1,000,000% worth it to come out on the other side and feel like you have some control and some options.
Yeah. And I have to say this, and then you can close it up there, Lacy, is when you take a look at what the base, like the knowledge of what the infinite banking concept is, and then you take a look at what's the financial vehicle used to exercise this, which happens to be, again, a dividend paying whole life insurance contracts, specially designed by someone who knows what they're doing, like we are, that even banks use this as one of their greatest pieces of foundations to keep their foundations, right? You look at BOLI, bank-owned life insurance. Like, hey, banks know that this has got to be also good for us.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we appreciate you. If you were ready to imagine what it could look like for you to ranch your way, build that system of policies, guys, you know where to find us, ranchyourway.com. Grab your copy of the book. There's a book bundle on there where you're going to get Becoming Your Own Banker and Farming Without the Bank. We highly recommend that. Questions, comments, feedbacks, head over to Apple and give us a 5-star review. Thank you for listening.
So glad you leaned in with us on the WinEH podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.